The first thing Alucard would notice is not the scale of the war, nor the density of the stars, nor even the sound of distant bombardment echoing through the void. It would be the silence beneath it all. A silence layered under prayer, under screaming engines, under the endless violence of a galaxy at war. Not peace, not calm. A silence like a held breath that has lasted 10,000 years. A silence that watches. In that silence, something ancient and predatory would recognize something else that refuses to die. And for the first time in a very long age, the Warhammer 40,000 universe would gain a problem it cannot categorize, cannot purge, and cannot fully understand. If you want to walk further into this collision of immortality and extinction, if you want stories where monsters meet empires and neither side blinks first, then stay with me. Share this descent with those who appreciate worlds that do not flinch from darkness, and subscribe not out of habit, but as a promise to return when the galaxy grows quiet and dangerous again. Alucard does not arrive with prophecy. There is no choir of voices announcing him, no tremor in the warp that sends astropaths screaming into silence. One moment, a forgotten moon on the edge of a nameless system exists as it has for centuries, scarred by mining, half-abandoned, orbiting a dying star with bureaucratic indifference. The next, something is standing in the ash where nothing stood before, coat stirring in a wind that should not exist. He tastes the air and smiles. It is old, not ancient in the way he understands antiquity, not layered with centuries of personal memory but stale with repetition. Faith recycled into law, violence ritualized into maintenance, blood spilled not in passion but in quotas. This is not a world that dreams, it endures. Alucard finds that charming. The moon's settlement is little more than a manufactorum outpost wrapped in hab blocks and defense emplacements that have not been updated in 3 generations. Its people work, pray, sleep, and die inside schedules so rigid they resemble fate. When the alarms sound, they do not scream. They move. When the vox grills bark orders, they obey. Fear exists here, but it has been domesticated. The first patrol finds him near a Prometheum relay tower, crimson coat stark against soot-black metal. They are PDF troopers, armor scuffed, lasguns held with the muscle memory of endless drills. Their sergeant demands identification in the clipped tones of someone who expects compliance as a law of nature. Alucard laughs. It is not loud, it does not echo, it is intimate, amused, and profoundly misplaced. The sound alone unsettles them more than any weapon could. One trooper hesitates. Another tightens his grip. The sergeant raises his voice, invoking authority backed by the Imperium itself. Alucard steps forward. What follows is not a battle. It is a correction. Las bolts tear through his chest, his skull, his throat, each impact burning with the focused fury of human industry. He collapses in a ruin of gore and laughter, body torn apart in ways that would satisfy any after-action report. Then he stands up. Flesh knits with obscene elegance. Bone reforms as if remembering its proper shape. Alucard's eyes glow red in the failing lumen light, not with rage but with delighted curiosity. He moves through them like a rumor given form, every strike excessive, theatrical, deliberate. When it is over, there is blood on the walls, on the tower, on the troopers who will never again file paperwork. He leaves one alive. Not out of mercy, out of necessity. The survivor crawls for 3 kilometers before collapsing, sobbing prayers to an emperor whose protection has just failed in a way he has no language to describe. By the time he is found, his story is already impossible. Reanimation is heresy. Regeneration is mutation. Laughter in the face of execution is something else entirely. The report moves upward. Administratum clerks flag it for review. Adeptus Arbites auditors cross-reference it with 1,000 other anomalies and find nothing that fits cleanly. The word xenos is considered, then discarded. Demon is whispered, then crossed out. There is no warp signature, no ritual residue, no psychic scream preceding the event. only corpses, and a survivor who cannot stop shaking. Alucard, meanwhile, walks the settlement openly now. No one stops him. Word spreads faster than authority ever could. People avert their eyes not in reverence but in the same instinctive way prey avoids drawing attention. He listens to them talk, about rations, about shifts, about the Emperor protects, spoken less as faith and more as punctuation. He finds the nearest shrine and steps inside. Candles gutter. Incense burns poorly. The imperial aquila looms overhead, wings spread in eternal judgment. Alucard tilts his head, studying it with something like professional interest. He has known gods. He has killed beliefs. This one feels distant, heavy, less a being than a structure built to survive disbelief. He presses a bloodied finger to the stone altar. Nothing happens. He laughs again, softer this time. By the time night falls, the moon's astropath has begun screaming, not from Alucard's presence, but from the administrative response it triggers. Messages stack. Priority codes escalate. A problem has appeared that cannot be solved by immediate annihilation because no one knows what it is. That uncertainty spreads faster than fear. Somewhere far away, an inquisitor pauses mid-prayer as a data slate pings, with a designation marked provisional, incomplete, and dangerous. Somewhere else, a cogitator logs an impossible casualty ratio and requests clarification that will never come. And Alucard stands beneath an alien sky, hands in his pockets, grinning at a galaxy that has just noticed him. Not as a savior, not as a conqueror, but as something it was never prepared to classify. The response does not arrive quickly. That is the first lesson Alucard learns about the Imperium of Man. For all its scale, for all its fury, it does not react so much as it deliberates, and that deliberation is lethal in its own way. While the moon waits, while its people retreat into locked habs and shuttered manufactorums, the machine of empire turns with glacial certainty, grinding data into doctrine. Alucard enjoys the wait. He wanders openly now, coat trailing through ash and incense smoke, boots echoing in corridors never meant for leisure. He listens. He always listens. The language is familiar enough, layered with fear and obedience, but the reverence is different here. These people do not bargain with their god. They do not plead. They assume surveillance. Even their prayers feel like reports filed in advance of punishment. He finds the astropath's tower sealed behind adamantium doors, sigils of warding etched deep into the frame. The air around it hums with restrained psychic effort, a mind pressed hard against limits it was never meant to test. Alucard does not force entry. There is no challenge in that. Instead, he places his palm against the metal and feels the vibration of terror on the other side. The astropath senses him then. A presence without warp resonance, a predator shaped like a man but anchored somewhere deeper than the immaterium. The scream that follows does not travel through the warp, it travels through flesh. Alucard withdraws his hand, amused, and leaves the tower intact. Messages must still be sent. He wants the Imperium to come looking. When the first Imperial ship translates into the system, it does so with overwhelming arrogance. A patrol cruiser, ancient and bristling with weapons, its hull inscribed with litanies that promise judgment. Thunderhawks detach and descend toward the moon in disciplined formations, engines howling like caged beasts. Alucard watches from a ridge of broken rock, red eyes reflecting firelight. He recognizes the posture immediately. This is not extermination. This is confirmation. The Adeptus Arbites deploy first, shock mauls crackling, armor pristine, visors opaque. They establish perimeters, secure Vox traffic, and begin interviews with the same clinical detachment they would apply to a riot or a tax revolt. They do not expect resistance. They expect compliance. They receive neither. The first Arbite squad corners Alucard in a transit concourse lined with devotional murals. Orders are issued. Stun rounds follow, designed to incapacitate, not destroy. When those fail, escalation protocols engage with perfect procedural calm. Alucard lets them get close. The fight is short and deeply educational. Shock mauls shatter against his skull. Bolt pistols tear holes through organs that refuse to remain damaged. He moves faster than their targeting augmetics can adjust, laughter echoing through the concourse as bodies hit the floor in precise, horrifying patterns. One Arbite's officer manages to land a point-blank shot to Alucard's face, the explosive round reducing his head to ruin. For half a second, there is hope. Then the head reforms. Not instantly, deliberately, bones sliding back into place, flesh knitting like a mockery of healing. Alucard's eyes open last, glowing brighter than before. The officer drops to his knees. Later, in sealed chambers aboard the cruiser, the footage is reviewed frame by frame. Tech priests mutter binaric prayers. Arbite's commanders argue classification. Someone finally says the word Inquisition, and the room goes very quiet. Alucard feels the shift long before the order is given. Attention has weight in this galaxy. It presses down, heavy and cold, when something important has noticed you. He welcomes it. The moon was becoming dull. The Inquisitor arrives personally. She does not descend in fire. She does not make speeches. Her shuttle lands with restrained precision, and she steps onto the moon's surface flanked by storm troopers whose discipline borders on devotion. Her rosette gleams dully against her armor, more threat than ornament. She studies the aftermath, the bodies, the patterns, the impossibilities. When she finally looks at Alucard standing openly among the ruins, her expression does not change. "Identify yourself," she says. Alucard bows, sweeping and theatrical, coat flaring. "Ah, at last, someone important." The storm troopers raise their weapons. The Inquisitor lifts a hand and they freeze. "You are not warp-spawned," she says slowly. "You are not registered Xenos. You do not exhibit sanctioned psychic phenomena, yet you violate every law of mortality known to this Imperium." Alucard smiles wider. "I do have that effect." She does not smile back. "You will be detained." Alucard laughs again, delighted. "Oh, you can try." The battle that follows is not about victory. It is about data. Null fields flare, biting into Alucard's senses in ways Lastfire never could. Psychers chant from protected positions, probing, testing, recoiling in confusion when they find nothing to anchor to. Weapons designed to erase demons reduce him to mist and shadow, and he reforms each time, slower now, but no less amused. The Inquisitor watches everything. She sees the limits, the delays, the moments where Alucard pauses, intrigued rather than harmed. She understands something then that chills her far more than his regeneration. This thing is not attacking the Imperium. It is studying it. When she finally orders withdrawal, it is not defeat. It is containment. The moon is sealed. Records are locked behind clearance codes that will outlive everyone present. Alucard is left standing in the ruins, hands clasped behind his back, eyes gleaming with interest. As the ships pull away, he looks up at the stars and hums softly. A galaxy that worships endurance. An empire that mistakes survival for righteousness. And somewhere deep within its vast, grinding bureaucracy, fear has just learned a new shape. Alucard tips his hat to the departing fleet. "This," he murmurs to the empty sky, "is going to be fun." The Imperium does not panic. It recalibrates. Across sectors that will never know the name of the moon Alucard first walked upon, sealed channels awaken and dormant protocols unfold with the inevitability of gravity. Data moves upward through layers of authority designed to absorb shock without displaying it. Each report is stripped of tone, reduced to action and outcome, until what remains is an anomaly that resists every category it is pressed into. The problem is not that Alucard cannot be killed. The problem is that He does not behave like anything the Imperium has already learned to fear. The Inquisitor's sealed transcript circulates among a very small audience. Words like demon and xenos appear only to be crossed out again. Psychona assessments return contradictions. Mechanicus analyses reject warp origin. Even the Adeptus Astra Telepathica offers only uneasy silence, their most experienced minds reporting the same impossible absence. There is something there. They can feel it, but it does not echo. That absence becomes the defining concern. Alucard leaves the quarantined moon on his own terms. No ship tracks his departure. No augur reads his trajectory. He simply walks away from the place where attention briefly converged, stepping into a galaxy whose scale excites him in a way battlefields never could. He moves through fringe worlds first, places where the Imperium's grasp is thin and survival has already eroded into improvisation. Here, his presence is mistaken for many things: a mutant warlord, a wandering saint, a curse. He corrects them all. On a mining world where promethium dust turns the sky a permanent bruise, a local enforcer gang tries to claim him as a symbol. Alucard lets them try. When they attempt to chain him, he allows it, studying the metallurgy with academic interest before tearing free and painting the refinery walls with their ambitions. He leaves their leader alive, not to spread fear, but to spread confusion. Fear can be managed. Confusion metastasizes. Stories begin to circulate. Not official ones. Not yet. These are whispered accounts traded in ration lines and void docks, passed along by voidsmen who swear they saw a man die 6 times and smile through all of them. The stories contradict one another, and that makes them dangerous. The Imperium thrives on singular narratives. Chaos thrives on multiplicity. Alucard exists somewhere in between, and the dissonance spreads. The Inquisition notices. Not all at once, not with consensus. Individual inquisitors flag fragments, comparing notes in private, each one wary of overreacting to what might still be an elaborate heresy or an unusually resilient psyker. Orders are given to observe, not engage. Assets are repositioned. Kill teams are placed on standby and then quietly redirected elsewhere. The anomaly is allowed to move. Alucard senses the attention again, heavier now, layered with deliberation rather than surprise. He welcomes it. This is a galaxy that thinks in terms of inevitability, and he has always enjoyed disproving inevitabilities. He makes no effort to conceal himself. Why would he? The Imperium will come regardless. It always does. When it does, it comes through the Astra Militarum. A world on the edge of compliance erupts into rebellion fueled by half-understood heretical doctrine. Alucard arrives in the middle of it, walking through artillery smoke as if it were morning fog. Guardsmen see him first, crimson coat vivid against mud and fire, and for a moment discipline wavers. Commissars bark orders. Lasguns fire. Alucard advances. He does not massacre them. That is what unsettles the officers most. He disarms squads, breaks bones without killing, lets tanks empty magazines into him, and then stands again, unharmed, dusting himself off like an insulted aristocrat. He laughs, taunts, salutes a regimental banner with exaggerated respect. The battle grinds to a halt not because of defeat, but because no one knows how to fight something that refuses to participate properly. The rebels, emboldened, rush forward. Alucard turns on them with sudden, breathtaking violence. He tears through cultists and demagogues with far more enthusiasm than he showed the guardsmen, reveling in the hypocrisy of their devotion. He calls them amateurs, pretenders. He mocks their gods, drinks deep of their fear, and leaves their movement decapitated and directionless. The Astra Militarum watches in stunned silence. When the smoke clears, Alucard stands alone between 2 broken forces, red eyes scanning the battlefield with something like disappointment. He expected more. The Imperium expected less. Reports pour in. This time, the Inquisition does not hesitate. A conclave is convened, small and viciously intelligent. Radical and Puritan alike agree on one thing: this entity cannot be allowed to continue operating unchallenged. Not because it is conquering worlds, but because it is rewriting the psychological contract of fear the Imperium depends on. Soldiers who survive encounters with Alucard do not speak of terror. They speak of absurdity, of helplessness stripped of meaning. That is unacceptable. A plan begins to form, not a single strike, not exterminatus, something quieter, something designed to test not his body but his limits. Information is leaked deliberately. A false trail. A world prepared as bait, its defenses tuned not for demons or xenos but for something else entirely. Alucard follows it gladly. As his boots touch down on the chosen world, he feels it immediately. A tension in the air, subtle but deliberate. Null technology hums beneath the surface. Faith is thick here, organized, weaponized. Whatever the Imperium has planned, it is not improvising anymore. Alucard grins, teeth flashing in the firelight. At last, the galaxy is taking him seriously. The world prepared for him is quiet in a way that feels deliberate. Not abandoned, not peaceful, controlled. The cities are intact, the manufactorums running, the population obedient to schedules that have been tightened just enough to feel like ritual rather than necessity. Imperial aquili hang from every thoroughfare, polished to a ceremonial gleam. Vox grills murmur prayers at regular intervals, their cadence too precise, too unified. This is not faith grown naturally. It has been cultivated. Alucard walks its streets unchallenged, and that alone tells him everything. The people avert their eyes not out of fear but instruction. They have been told not to look. He can taste it in the air, layered over incense and recycled oxygen, anticipation sharpened into discipline. Somewhere beneath the city, something hums at a frequency that makes his smile thin. No. Not enough to hurt him, not yet, but enough to be interesting. He lets the tension build. He visits shrines. He listens to sermons preached with unusual fervor, each one emphasizing purity, obedience, and the virtue of eradication. The priests do not mention his name, but they do not need to. Every warning is shaped like him. Every condemnation carries his silhouette. On the third day, the trap closes. It begins with silence. Vox grills cut out mid-prayer. The city's ambient noise drops away, leaving only the sound of Alucard's boots on stone. From hidden apertures, fields snap into place, invisible but unmistakable. The air thickens, reality stiffening around him as null projectors come fully online. Alucard stops walking. The sensation is unpleasant. Not pain, not exactly, but pressure applied to something deeper than flesh. His regeneration slows. He can feel it, each reforming cell meeting resistance as if reality itself is pushing back, insisting on finality. He laughs anyway, though the sound comes out rougher than before. Stormtroopers emerge in disciplined waves, armor matte black, weapons humming with suppressed fury. At their center stands an Inquisitor he does not recognize, flanked by robed figures whose presence feels like absence given shape. Sisters of Silence. Now that earns his attention. They advance without words, their very proximity carving holes in sensation. Alucard feels the null field bite deeper, eroding not his body, but the rules that allow it to persist. He moves faster than human eyes can follow, tearing through the first ranks with savage efficiency. But each wound takes longer to close. Each death leaves a residue of effort behind. The Inquisitor watches closely. This is not meant to kill him, not yet. This is measurement. When the sisters draw nearer, Alucard feels something he has not felt in centuries. Constraint. His laughter sharpens, edged with genuine delight. "Oh," he says, blood dripping from his chin as his body reforms imperfectly. "You are learning." The fight escalates. Specialized munitions detonate, laced with sanctified alloys and impossible geometries. Each impact tears him apart more completely than before. For long seconds at a time, There is nothing where Alucard stood but mist and shadow struggling to remember how to be solid. And then he comes back. Slower, still smiling. The Inquisitor signals withdrawal. Instantly, the sisters pull back, the null fields retracting in layers rather than all at once. The pressure eases, and Alucard's regeneration surges violently, overcorrecting, flesh snapping back into place with audible force. He stands amid the ruin, coat shredded, eyes burning brighter than they have since his arrival in this galaxy. The city burns in pockets, not from bombardment, but from human panic released all at once. The Imperium's forces extract cleanly, leaving behind devastation carefully calibrated to spread rumor without offering proof. Alucard watches them go, chest rising and falling in a way it has not needed to in a very long time. He is exhilarated. For the first time, the Imperium has not tried to simply erase him. It has tried to understand him by breaking pieces off and examining what remains. That marks a shift, a dangerous one. Across the sector, the Conclave reviews the results. They are grimly satisfied and deeply unsettled. The entity can be constrained, slowed, contained perhaps with sufficient preparation, but it adapts, it learns. Worse, it enjoys the process. Every engagement sharpens it not just physically but strategically. This is not a beast reacting to stimuli. This is a mind refining itself against opposition. Orders are issued. No more partial measures. If it cannot be killed, it will be isolated, denied stimulus, starved of conflict and meaning. Containment worlds are proposed, psychic null zones expanded, long-term suppression strategies drafted in language that avoids admitting uncertainty. Alucard feels the shift again, heavier than before. The galaxy is closing its fist. He looks up at the night sky, at stars he has not yet visited, wars he has not yet tasted. Somewhere out there, the Imperium is planning to bury him alive in procedure and silence. He grins, blood drying on his face. They think endurance is their strength. They have no idea who taught the universe how to endure monsters. Alucard turns and walks into the fire, already anticipating the next move. Containment is a concept born of fear disguised as reason. Across the Imperium, orders shift from eradication to limitation, from execution to architecture. Where once the response to anomaly was fire and erasure, now it becomes design. Systems are adjusted. Zones are marked. Entire worlds are evaluated not for productivity but for suitability as cages. The language used is calm, technical, almost merciful. No one speaks of failure. They speak of strategy. Alucard feels it in the way resistance changes shape. The galaxy no longer lunges at him. It maneuvers. He travels through war zones that should be erupting into glorious chaos, only to find them oddly muted, conflicts resolved too quickly or starved of escalation. Fleets divert. Kill teams disengage. Even cult activity thins around him, as if the Imperium has decided that denying him spectacle is preferable to feeding his curiosity. It is irritating. He follows the pattern inward, toward regions of heavier control, places where faith and infrastructure intertwine so tightly they become indistinguishable. On one such world, he finally encounters them. Adeptus Astartes. They do not arrive dramatically. There is no grand announcement, no roar of engines to herald their descent. They are simply there, armored giants emerging from smoke and dust with the inevitability of a law being enforced. Their presence weighs on the battlefield, bending morale and probability alike. Alucard studies them with genuine interest. These are not soldiers, they are weapons shaped like myths. The Space Marines do not speak to him. They open fire with disciplined precision, bolters roaring, rounds tearing him apart in ways that would satisfy any tactical projection. For a moment, the battlefield resembles something like symmetry. Destruction meets regeneration. Impact meets laughter. Then Alucard moves. He is faster than their targeting augmetics expect, more fluid than their doctrines allow. He closes distance, shattering ceramite with blows that should not carry that much force. One Marine is torn in half, another crushed against a hab wall hard enough to leave an imprint. Their blood is different, thicker, heavier. It carries a weight that speaks of altered humanity. That intrigues him. The Marines adapt instantly. Formations tighten. Fire patterns adjust. They do not retreat. They do not hesitate. They fight him not as a monster but as an environmental hazard to be neutralized through repetition. When one falls, another steps into position without comment. Alucard is destroyed. Then he reforms. Slower this time. He notices, he always notices. The Marines press the advantage, their chaplain intoning litanies that reverberate through the air with a pressure that is not psychic, but something adjacent. Faith weaponized into discipline, belief shaped into armor. Alucard feels the friction where their conviction grinds against his persistence. It does not stop him, but it does cost him. The battle ends not with victory but with interruption. A signal cuts through the field, priority absolute. The Marines disengage in perfect order, extraction swift and efficient. They leave Alucard standing amid wreckage and corpses, coat tattered, regeneration still knitting muscle and bone back into place. He watches them go, expression unreadable. That was not a test of strength. That was a test of sustainability. Elsewhere, reports converge. The Adeptus Mechanicus begins to take interest, not in Alucard as a being, but as a system. Tech priests analyze footage of his regeneration frame by binaric cant, crackling with fascination and unease. There is no visible energy source, no detectable warp exchange. The process violates conservation principles the Mechanicus treats as near sacred, which makes it heretical, which makes it irresistible. A Forge world petitions the Inquisition for permission to attempt controlled capture. The request is denied, then quietly reconsidered, then routed through channels so classified they barely exist. Everyone involved knows it is a terrible idea. Everyone involved also knows they will do it anyway. Alucard senses the shift long before the trap is sprung. The galaxy's attention sharpens, narrowing its focus with surgical intent. This time, the lure is not violence or challenge. It is knowledge. A derelict forge complex, its defenses inactive, its vaults rumored to contain relics predating the Imperium itself. The bait is obvious. The interest it sparks in Alucard is genuine anyway. He has always enjoyed ruins. They are honest about what happens to things that last too long. He enters the complex alone. The air inside hums with dormant machinery and suppressed potential. Symbols etched into the walls crawl at the edge of perception, not chaotic, but excessively ordered. This is not a place of worship. It is a place of function elevated to dogma. The doors seal behind him. For the first time since his arrival in this galaxy, Alucard does not laugh immediately. The null field here is deeper, layered, integrated into the structure itself, not designed to kill but to define, to impose limits where none should exist. He feels his regeneration slow to a crawl, each reforming motion resisted by reality itself. From the shadows, red-robed figures emerge, mechadendrites twitching, augmetic eyes glowing with cold reverence. A Magos steps forward, voice crackling with filtered awe. "You are an error," it says, "and errors must be understood before they are corrected." Alucard smiles, though it takes effort now. "Oh," he replies softly, feeling the walls close in, "this is going to hurt." Pain, Alucard discovers, still has texture. The forge complex does not assault him all at once. It applies pressure gradually, methodically, as if calibrating itself against his resistance. The null field deepens in pulses, each one tightening the boundaries of what his body is allowed to remember how to do, Regeneration that once flowed like instinct now requires intent. Intent requires focus. Focus can be disrupted. The Adeptus Mechanicus understands this. Cranes descend from the ceiling on whispering rails, their limbs ending in instruments that hum with restrained force. Runes crawl across the chamber walls, not glowing but absorbing light, drinking it in until the air itself seems dimmer. Alucard feels the structure asserting definitions, insisting that he conform to parameters that reality finds comforting. He is penned. Not physically, conceptually. Mago's voices overlap in binaric cant, translating sensation into data, experience into hypothesis. They do not hate him. They do not fear him. Their fascination is colder than either. To them, Alucard is not a threat or a marvel. He is a deviation from design. The first incision is exploratory. It cuts deeper than any blade he has encountered so far, slicing through flesh that hesitates before healing. Alucard hisses, more surprised than pained, and then laughs, low and delighted. The sound echoes strangely in the chamber, distorted by the null field into something almost fragile. "You should have asked first," he says, watching his blood bead and fall instead of snapping back into place. The Magos does not respond. A mechadendrite adjusts pressure. Another instrument follows, emitting a harmonic vibration that makes Alucard's vision blur. For a moment, the world stutters. His body reforms incorrectly, muscle overlapping where it should not, bone misaligned by millimeters that feel like kilometers. That draws a genuine reaction. Alucard snarls, tearing free of the conceptual restraints with sheer will, lunging toward the nearest priest. His hand closes around a metal skull, fingers sinking into ceramite and flesh alike. He tears the Magos apart with brutal efficiency, savoring the scream as data and terror collapse into one. The forge responds instantly. Suppressive fields spike. Restraints reassert themselves, harsher now, less curious. The remaining tech priests retreat, not in panic but in recalculation. Servitor forms lumber forward, expendable and precise, flooding the chamber with bodies designed to absorb his violence without learning from it. Alucard tears through them anyway. Each kill costs him more time, more effort. Regeneration lags, then stutters, then resumes imperfectly. He bleeds longer than he has in centuries. He feels something like exhaustion, not of muscle, but of process. The realization thrills and infuriates him in equal measure. So this galaxy can hurt him. Good. The ceiling splits open. From above descends a containment lattice, its geometry wrong in ways that make his teeth ache. It does not strike. It settles around him, layering null upon null, definition upon definition. Alucard feels his connection to himself narrowing, not severed, but channeled into something thinner, more manageable. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he is truly restrained. Silence falls, broken only by the hum of machinery and Alucard's slow, deliberate breathing. His eyes burn in the dimness, fixed on the lattice that holds him. He does not struggle, he studies. Somewhere beyond the forge complex, inquisitorial observers watch through relays filtered and sanitized beyond recognition. They do not see a monster in chains. They see a proof of concept, a victory measured not in death but in delay. The Mago's voice returns over a vox channel, distorted but steady. "You can be held," it intones. "You can be measured, you can be replicated eventually." Alucard laughs again, softer now but no less dangerous. "Eventually," he agrees, "that's the word you should be afraid of." They begin the transfer. The lattice shifts, sealing him within layers of containment designed to be mobile, relocatable, adaptable. This is not a prison meant to last forever. It is a prototype. Alucard feels the motion as the structure lifts, his awareness stretching outward even as his body is compressed inward. He lets it happen, because he understands something now that the Imperium does not. They believe containment is denial, starvation, that by depriving him of stimulus, of conflict, of blood and spectacle, they can reduce him to irrelevance. They believe eternity without engagement is a punishment worse than death. They are half right. What they do not understand is patience. Alucard has waited out centuries of boredom before. He has endured cages built by men who thought time itself was a weapon. He has learned that endurance is not passive. It is predatory. It is the quiet certainty that whatever is built will eventually decay, and whatever decays will eventually open. As the forge world recedes, as the lattice locks him into transit, Alucard closes his eyes. Not to sleep. To listen. Beyond the null, beyond the layers of definition, he can still feel the galaxy grinding on, wars flaring, faith hardening, systems overextending. Somewhere out there something will break, something always does. And when it does, the Imperium will need monsters again. Alucard smiles in the dark, already counting the centuries. Time loses its shape inside the containment. At first, Alucard measures it out of habit. He counts heartbeats that are no longer necessary, breaths that no longer serve a function, moments marked only by the faint oscillation of the null field surrounding him. The lattice does not move. It does not speak. It does not acknowledge his presence beyond the steady correction of any attempt to exist outside its parameters. Eventually, counting becomes pointless. The Imperium has placed him somewhere deep and quiet, far from forge smog skis and screaming battlefields. The containment vault is embedded within layers of stone and void shielding, isolated even from the worlds that orbit nearby. No windows, no external reference, just black adamantium walls etched with warding sigils whose meanings are half prayer, half math. This is not neglect, it is design. They visit him rarely. When they do, it is never the same way twice. Sometimes it is Mechanicus adepts, voiceless behind respirator masks, their augmetic eyes recording fluctuations in the null field. Sometimes it is sanctioned psychers standing behind reinforced barriers, testing how close they can come before something in the chamber reacts. Once, an Inquisitor appears in person, his presence heavy with authority and suspicion, his hand resting casually on a weapon that would be meaningless here. They ask questions, not out loud. They project queries through instruments, probing reactions rather than words. Alucard feels the pressure of inquiry brush against his mind, careful and constrained, like fingers hovering just short of flame. They want to know what he is when stripped of motion, violence, and spectacle. They want to know whether the hunger fades. It does not. Hunger is not an urge for Alucard. It is structure. It is orientation. Even here, even reduced to a conceptual silhouette of himself, he feels it coil patiently, feeding on anticipation instead of blood. The Imperium mistakes inactivity for dormancy. They do not understand that something can be quiet without being diminished. The first change comes without warning. The null field flickers. Not a failure, not a breach, a recalibration. The lattice tightens for a fraction of a second, then loosens in a way so subtle it would go unnoticed by anything less attentive than him. Alucard's awareness snaps to it instantly. He does not move. He does not test it. He waits. Moments later, the chamber fills with sound. It is distant at first, bleeding through layers of shielding like an echo through stone. Chanting. Not Mechanicus binaric cant, but human voices raised in ritual rhythm. Alucard tilts his head slightly, more reflex than necessity. A war is happening nearby. Not a skirmish, not a riot, something larger. The chanting carries the weight of desperation, the cadence of faith pushed to its breaking point. He feels it ripple faintly through the containment field, not touching him directly, but altering the environment around him in ways the machines struggle to fully compensate for. Faith is inefficient. The Imperium knows this. They rely on it anyway. As the hours or days stretch on, the distant sounds grow louder. Explosions register as pressure changes in the vault's structure. Emergency systems engage, reinforcing layers, rerouting power. Alucard's senses strain not in the walls but in the logic that governs them. Resources are being diverted, priorities reassigned. He smiles. The next visit comes abruptly. The Inquisitor returns, this time flanked by armed stormtroopers and a robed psyker whose presence makes the air feel thin. The psyker does not look at Alucard directly. His gaze skitters along the lattice, avoiding the burning points of red light where Alucard's eyes rest. "We are relocating you," the Inquisitor says flatly, as if speaking to a crate of ammunition. Alucard chuckles. "You say that like I have a choice." The Inquisitor ignores him. He gestures and the containment field hums as power surges through it. Outside the vault, alarms howl, distant and overlapping. The chanting has shifted into screams now, some of pain, some of ecstasy. Chaos. Not as a philosophy, as an event. As they initiate the transfer, the psyker stumbles. Just for a moment. His concentration wavers, and through that infinitesimal gap, something reaches inward. Not a voice, not a vision. A presence. Alucard feels it brush against the edges of the null field, testing, tasting. It is vast and unfocused, more emotion than entity, carried on a tide of belief twisted into something raw and volatile. The lattice shudders in response, overcorrecting, spiking suppression levels. The psyker screams. His mind fractures under the pressure, blood streaming from his nose as he collapses. The stormtroopers recoil instinctively. The Inquisitor swears, snapping orders into his vox. And in that chaos, for the briefest of moments, the containment field misaligns. Alucard inhales. It is the first full breath he has taken since his capture, and it is glorious. Power surges through him, not enough to break free, not yet, but enough to remind the systems what they are holding. The lattice strains, runes flaring as definitions fight to reassert themselves. Alucard opens his eyes wide, meeting the Inquisitor's gaze through layers of force and metal. "Careful," he says softly. "Your gods are louder than your machines." The field stabilizes, the breach closes. Alucard is restrained once more. But the Imperium has made a mistake. They have moved him closer to the war. And war in this galaxy is never contained. The transport vessel is built like a coffin. Thick slabs of void-hardened adamantium enclose the containment chamber, layered with redundant fields, sigils, and suppression arrays designed to overlap so completely that no single failure can matter. Power conduits hum constantly, feeding the null lattice with enough energy to cripple lesser anomalies outright. The Imperium has learned, through bitter repetition, that anything worth fearing must be buried under excess. Alucard lies at the center of it all, suspended not by restraints but by absence. Motion is denied not through force, but through definition. He exists only where the systems allow him to exist, and nowhere else. Outside the coffin, the war draws closer. Even sealed away, he feels it. The vibration of macro cannons firing in orbit. The lurch of evasive maneuvers as the vessel weaves through debris and burning voidcraft. Vox traffic bleeds through shielding in broken fragments. Shouted orders clipped by static. Prayers shouted with the desperation of people who know they are about to die. Chaos is not a single thing. It is a spectrum of failures converging at once. The first boarding action begins with silence. No alarms, no warning klaxons, just a sudden shift in the vessel's internal pressure and a cascading series of micro-adjustments as systems attempt to compensate for something they cannot identify. Alucard feels the change ripple through the lattice, not as damage, but as confusion. Then the screams start. They come from far away at first, echoing through metal corridors like ghosts trapped in the walls. Las fire crackles, explosions bloom and fade. The screams multiply, overlapping until they lose individual meaning and become texture. The Imperium fights with discipline even when it is losing. That much is clear from the rhythm of the battle. Fire teams fall back in measured intervals. Bulkheads seal. Countermeasures deploy with grim efficiency. But something about this assault does not follow expected patterns. There is laughter mixed with the screams. Alucard's lips curl upward. The transport shudders as something heavy tears through its hull. Emergency fields flare, sealing breaches faster than atmosphere can escape. The null lattice spikes in response, tightening reflexively, as if anticipating a threat that exists only in probability. He feels it then. A presence much closer than before. Not distant and diffuse like the earlier brush of the warp, but sharp and focused, pressing against reality with intent. It is not subtle. It does not need to be. The containment systems react violently. Runes ignite along the chamber walls, flooding the space with suppressive force. Alucard grins, baring teeth. "So eager," he murmurs. The first impact hits the coffin directly. The vessel rocks as something massive collides with the outer hull. Metal screams. Gravity stutters. For a split second, the null field flickers again. Not a failure, but a prioritization error as power is rerouted to structural integrity. That is all Alucard needs. He does not explode outward. He does not break free in a dramatic surge of violence. He simply stops being where the lattice expects him to be. The containment chamber empties itself. Alarms erupt instantly, systems shrieking as sensors detect impossibilities. Internal turrets swivel, firing into empty space. Suppression fields spike, collapsing inward on nothing. Alucard reappears several corridors away, his form coalescing from shadow and intention. The air around him ripples as reality struggles to agree on his shape. He rolls his shoulders slowly, savoring the sensation of movement returning to him. The corridor is filled with bodies. Imperial crew lie scattered across the deck, their armor torn open, their expressions frozen in terror or rapture. Blood coats the walls in wide, careless arcs. At the far end of the passage, something moves. A Chaos Space Marine steps into view, armor warped and crawling with living sigils. His helm is split open, revealing a face twisted into a permanent grin, eyes burning with devotion to something vast and cruel. The Marine freezes when he sees Alucard. For the first time in a long while, something other than hunger crosses Alucard's expression. Interest. The Marine raises his weapon instinctively, then hesitates. He can feel it too, the wrongness, the way Alucard does not resonate like other warp-touched entities. There is no psychic stench, no echo of a patron's favor, just presence, absolute and self-contained. "You are not of the Four," the Marine snarls. Alucard laughs, the sound echoing down the blood-slick corridor. "Oh, darling, I was never fond of sharing." The Marine fires. Bolter rounds tear through the air, detonating against Alucard's body in bursts of flame and shrapnel. For a moment, he is reduced to mist and fragments, his form scattered violently across the corridor. Then the fragments move. Blood flows backward, smoke condenses. Flesh reknits itself midair, laughing as it reforms. Alucard steps forward through the lingering fire, unmarked, eyes blazing brighter than before. The Marine roars and charges, chainsword screaming as it revs to life. Alucard meets him halfway. What follows is not a fight, it is a demonstration. When it is over, the corridor is quiet again, save for the distant sounds of battle still raging through the ship. Alucard stands amid the remains, adjusting his coat as if preparing for a formal engagement. He looks upward, sensing the war beyond the hull, the tides of belief and despair crashing together in glorious excess. "This galaxy," he says softly, "is going to be so much fun." Somewhere deeper within the vessel, a Vox channel crackles to life. An Imperial voice, strained and shaking, reports the breach, the escape, the impossible entity loose aboard. The message, never reaches its destination. Alucard turns toward the heart of the ship, toward the largest concentrations of fear and faith, and begins to walk. Behind him, the coffin remains sealed and empty. Ahead of him, the war waits. And beyond that war, an entire galaxy ripe for monsters. The first world Alucard truly sees burns quietly. Not in the spectacular way Imperial propaganda favors, with blazing skis and heroic last stands, but in the slow, suffocating manner of a planet that has already accepted its fate. From high orbit, its atmosphere is stained with ash and chemical haze, clouds bruised purple and rust-red by pollution and warp fallout. The void around it crawls with wreckage, shattered Imperial escorts, gutted transports, fragments of things that were never meant to exist in real space. The transport never reaches the surface intact. What remains of the vessel limps through the atmosphere trailing fire, its engines coughing black smoke as defensive batteries below try and fail to track it properly. Vox traffic screams across every channel at once, prayers, panic, conflicting orders shouted by voices that know they are being ignored by fate itself. Alucard watches from the breach-riddled hull, coat snapping in the windless void as gravity begins to assert itself. The planet below feels crowded, not with people alone, but with attention. Belief presses upward from the surface like heat from a furnace, mingled with terror so concentrated it almost tastes sweet. Chaos has already been here for a long time. The transport finally tears itself apart in the upper atmosphere, its remaining hull scattering like debris from a shattered shell. Alucard does not fall so much as descend, drifting through fire and broken metal with deliberate grace. Flames coil around him, drawn by something older than physics, and then peel away again as he touches down amid the ruins of a once-proud city. The streets are wide and empty, paved with cracked ferrocrete and lined by buildings that lean inward as if exhausted. Cathedral spires loom overhead, their stained glass shattered, imperial aquilas defaced with blasphemous runes carved deep into stone. Smoke hangs low, carrying the stink of promethium, rot, and old blood. Civilians emerge cautiously from hiding places as the echoes of the crash fade. They are thin, hollow-eyed, wrapped in filthy rags or tattered remnants of work uniforms. Some carry crude weapons, most carry nothing at all. They freeze when they see him. Alucard stands at the center of the avenue like a wrong answer to a prayer, crimson eyes glowing softly in the gloom. He takes in their fear with visible satisfaction, breathing deeply as if savoring a fine vintage. Now this, he says quietly, feels like home. The first cultists arrive moments later. They come in a loose mob, armed with auto guns, blades, and makeshift icons hammered together from scrap metal and bone. Their bodies are scarred by ritual mutilation, their eyes alight with manic devotion. Warp energy clings to them like sweat, distorting the air around their movements. They shout praises to gods whose names they barely understand. They rush him. Alucard does not move at first. He allows them to close the distance, to feel hope bloom briefly in their twisted hearts. Then he steps forward, and the street erupts into violence. It is fast, too fast to follow cleanly. One moment the cultists are charging, the next they are coming apart in pieces, their blood painting the ruins in vast, elegant arcs. Alucard moves like a shadow given intent, appearing and disappearing between heartbeats, tearing through flesh and bone with casual cruelty. The civilians watch in stunned silence. Some scream, some drop to their knees, weeping. Others stare with expressions that hover somewhere between terror and awe, witnessing a kind of salvation that feels deeply, profoundly wrong. When it is over, the street is quiet again. Bodies lie scattered in unnatural configurations, blood pooling in the cracks of the pavement. Alucard stands amid it all, unmarked, adjusting his gloves with meticulous care. That is when the Space Marines arrive. They descend from the smoke like falling idols, jump packs roaring as armored figures slam into the street with enough force to crater the ground. Their armor is a mockery of imperial design, twisted and bloated, adorned with trophies taken from 100 conquered worlds. Warplight flickers between the seams of their plates. They fan out with practiced precision, weapons raised. For a moment, no one moves. Then one of the Marines steps forward, helm retracted to reveal a face that has forgotten what humanity ever meant. He studies Alucard with open fascination. "You are not claimed," the Marine says slowly. "You walk free where even demons kneel." Alucard smiles, wide and delighted. "I hate kneeling," he replies. The Marine laughs, a booming, distorted sound. "Good, our gods appreciate ambition." Alucard's smile fades just slightly. "Oh no," he says gently. "You misunderstand. I don't serve gods, I eat monsters." The Marines open fire. Bolter rounds detonate across the street, tearing apart stone, bodies, and air itself. Alucard vanishes into the barrage, reappearing behind one Marine in a spray of blood and laughter. He tears the giant apart with shocking ease, strength amplified by centuries of predation and something darker, something perfectly adapted to slaughter. The Marines respond with disciplined fury, chainswords revving, plasma weapons screaming as they unleash everything they have. The street becomes a war zone in miniature, fire and gore blending into a single, brutal tapestry. And above it all, Alucard laughs. He feels it now more clearly than ever, the nature of this galaxy, the way it feeds on extremes, the way belief shapes reality into a weapon. The Imperium survives through cruelty. Chaos thrives on excess. And he is something else entirely. As the last Marine falls, torn apart piece by piece, Alucard looks toward the towering cathedral at the end of the avenue. Warplight pulses faintly within its shattered nave, a beacon of corruption drawing power from the suffering around it. He can feel something watching him from within. Curious, hungry. Alucard wipes blood from his cheek and begins to walk toward the cathedral doors, boots crunching over broken armor and bone. Behind him, the civilians remain frozen, unsure whether they have witnessed deliverance or the arrival of something far worse. Ahead of him, the warp stirs in anticipation. And somewhere beyond this world, forces far older and far more powerful have begun to notice that something new has entered their domain. The cathedral breathes. Not metaphorically, not in the poetic way mortals excuse unease. The stone itself exhales, dust drifting from cracked arches in slow, rhythmic pulses, as if the structure is alive and barely restraining its hunger. Alucard steps through the shattered doors without hesitation, boots echoing against a nave that has been hollowed out and remade into something obscene. Once this place was built to inspire awe. Now it inspires obedience of a different kind. Warplight bleeds through the broken stained glass, painting the interior in bruised purples and sickly reds. Chains hang where banners once did, each one strung with bones, icons, and half-living things that twitch as he passes. The air is thick with incense and decay, layered so densely that even breathing feels like participation in a ritual. At the center of the cathedral stands the altar. It is no longer stone. It is flesh and metal fused together, grown rather than built, pulsing faintly as if responding to unseen tides. Around it kneel cult leaders and lesser sorcerers, their bodies twisted by devotion and warp exposure, their voices raised in a low chant that makes the walls shudder. They stop when they see him. Silence ripples outward, the chant collapsing into nothing. Several of them recoil instinctively, sensing something profoundly wrong. Others lean forward, eyes alight with reverence, mistaking his presence for a sign. One of them rises. The sorcerer is tall and gaunt, his robe stitched with runes that crawl like insects. His face is split by ritual scars, eyes glowing with borrowed power. He spreads his arms wide, smiling in triumph. A herald, he breathes, a king sent ahead of. Alucard is in front of him before the sentence finishes. He does not strike immediately. He leans in close enough for the sorcerer to smell the blood on him, to see his own reflection in crimson eyes that hold no echo of the warp. "No," Alucard says softly, "I'm the audit." The sorcerer tries to scream. His voice never makes it past his teeth. The altar reacts instantly. Warp energy surges, the cathedral convulsing as something vast and coiled beneath reality stirs in irritation. The air thickens to the point of resistance, pressure bearing down on Alucard from all sides, attempting to define him, to bind him within the logic of the immaterial. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Alucard feels resistance that matters. He laughs delighted. "Oh, you do bite," he says, eyes blazing brighter as shadows stretch unnaturally toward him. The warp does not manifest as a single entity. It never does. Instead, it presses in fragments, whispers, claws of intention, shapes that never fully resolve. Promises brush against his mind, offering dominion, endless slaughter, elevation beyond mortal constraints. It is generous, it is wrong. Alucard spreads his arms. "I've been to hell," he says calmly. "Yours is crowded." He steps forward into the pressure. Reality tears. Not violently, not catastrophically. It simply fails to agree with itself around him. Warp constructs unravel as they make contact, pulled apart not by opposing power but by incompatibility. The altar screams, a sound felt rather than heard, as its connection fractures. The cultists scatter, some fleeing, some falling to their knees in rapture or despair. The cathedral begins to collapse inward, stone cracking as the structure's unnatural supports give way. Deep beneath it all, something withdraws. Not destroyed, not defeated, simply denied. Alucard stands amid the ruin as the warp presence retreats, its attention lingering just long enough to take measure of him. There is no rage in that attention, no hatred. Only interest. When the last of the warp light gutters out, the cathedral is quiet once more, reduced to rubble and smoldering flesh-metal remnants. Alucard surveys the destruction with mild disappointment. He muses. No throne, no crown, just parasites. Outside, the city trembles. Imperial forces are landing now. Thunderhawks roar overhead, their silhouettes cutting through smoke and ash. Voxcasters blare overlapping commands as Astra Militarum regiments deploy, reclaiming streets inch by bloody inch. Alucard steps out into the open air just as the first Imperial troops round the corner, weapons raised. They freeze. Lasguns tremble in uncertain hands as dozens of soldiers stare at the figure standing amid chaos dead, cathedral ruins smoking behind him. Their expressions flicker through shock, fear, and something dangerously close to hope. An officer steps forward, voice tight but steady. "Identify yourself." Alucard considers the question. Names are interesting things. In this galaxy they carry weight. Belief sharpens them. He could give them one, he could let it spread. He smiles. "Tell your superiors," he says, turning away as if the matter is already settled, that the war changed direction today. Before they can respond, he dissolves into shadow, slipping between moments, reappearing atop a ruined spire overlooking the city. From there, he watches the Imperium reclaim what remains, observes chaos retreat and regroup, senses the subtle shift rippling outward through the warp. He feels it now, unmistakably. Attention. Not worship, not command, observation. Powers ancient and vast have noticed the anomaly walking their battlefield. They do not yet understand him, but they are adjusting, recalculating. And somewhere far beyond this world, in places where decisions echo across millennia, questions are being asked. Alucard laughs softly, wind tugging at his coat as the city burns below. "Good," he says. "I was hopping for a challenge." The galaxy does not answer, but it is listening.